Welcome to the Scottish Watches podcast, now available in video, it turns out. I think the first thing we should probably do, if you're already watching us on YouTube, it'd be great if you give us a like, a sub, because I think that's what the YouTube people say, isn't it, Dave?
And if you find us on YouTube and you fancy listening to the podcast in the car, travelling to work, then that's an option for you as well. Please do remember, if there's anything that you see that you don't like, or if there's anything you think we could do better, or maybe we could add in, feel free to let us know. Try and do it in kind of ways possible.
I thought you were used to getting paid in kind, Dave.
Depends what services are being rendered, but
Fair enough, we'll not dwell on that too much, but be sure to keep watching until the end because we've got a ton of new releases to talk about, industry news, we've got information on how you can get a hold of unique pieces, and we have many of them because our charity auction has now been released to the public. We can now talk about all the brands, all the watches, all the iterations of the watches, and how you can get involved to raise a lot of money and get some nice wristwatches on your wrist as well. But we should probably start as we mean to go on and get the wrist checks out of the way. Should I go first?
Yes, you're going first.
Okay, this is a game we play every week, and sometimes Dave buckles, but not today. So on my wrist is my Rolex Daytona, which is the white gold edition on Oysterflex. Picked this up almost a year to the day, could actually be its birthday. So I have had this one in the collection for 12 months. It has been my favourite Rolex. It has pushed the Batman out of the game, which I never thought it would, because the Batman is kind of the watch that got me into the hobby, but I actually fell in love with this one because it wasn't the watch for me. I'd put my name down with a number of ADs, finally got a call last year to say, we've got a watch in if you want it. It's not the one you're after, because the one I was after was the rose gold, or the ever rose I think they call it, and couldn't get it. Then they changed it. They changed it up and you couldn't get the one I was actually after. They changed it to have what was known as Sundust. But I got the call to say, listen, we've got this one here if you want to come in and have a look at it. I had to travel right across the country to check this one out, and yeah, fell in love with it, and it has been an absolute sleeper hit with me. But this hasn't left the collection. People thought I'd probably sell it on. Dave, you probably thought I'd be getting rid of it quite quickly as well, but it has stayed. It is probably my favourite watch at the moment, has been for about a year, has pushed the Mad 1 aside, pushed the Batman aside, and although I'm going to be getting something out of the safe, I'm going to be dropping this one back to the safe deposit folks at the vault and swapping this for something later on because there's a new addition to the family.
I believe you were going to get rid of it. I didn't think that would last as long as it has. I think, to be fair, you were kind of in and out of love with it in a degree. Initially, you loved it, then you weren't quite sure about it, then you didn't think you'd be able to wear it, and you kind of haven't kind of flitted with the idea. But I think it's becoming more and more a stalwart of your wearings, shall we say, because I've seen you wear it to places I wasn't expecting to see you wearing it, and I've seen you wear it much more often than I thought you would. So, yeah, fair play. It's grown on you and you've stuck with it. I don't think I've seen you wearing any of your other Rolexes since you had that one.
Well, I've only actually got the other one, and that is the Batman. And then it got moved to the vault for safety. And speaking of safety, and talking of wearing watches in places you shouldn't, did you see the latest Paul Thorpe video where he decided to wear a fake Richard Mille and walk around London baiting people that were likely to follow him and potentially steal his watches? Now, for a guy that's been robbed 3 times and is really against the whole idea of getting robbed again and jumped, because I think all his teeth get knocked out at one point and he get followed into a car park at another point. He was held up in his store a number of times when he actually sold watches. It kind of blew my mind that he was going to put himself in jeopardy for YouTube.
Yeah, I was literally about to say myself, this strikes me as one of those slightly dumb moments, what we go with, where, you're doing okay and you need to create content and you think, I know, shock value gets ramped up, etc., etc. And to be fair, crime in London, it's a massive metropolitan city. It's not like it's never had crime. It's always had crime. And watch crime's always been there. But it's very much becoming more violent. And whether that's because of cost of living or just because society's becoming more violent, the amount of violent robberies is massively increased. So to go around kind of baiting it with something that's probably well on the radar of people that do want to have a watch and aren't going to think too hard and too long about whether they should or shouldn't. But, I guess everyone needs the content on their YouTubes.
Well, seeing as we're now influencers, should I be drinking this kind of stuff?
Jesus Christ almighty. I mean, seriously, I like it. I like the pink can though, but you could only have upped that. You need to get your hold better. You're covering that bottom E there. That's not going to go down well. There we go. That's much more appropriate to our kind of qualities.
Welcome to Scottish Watches, everybody. Have a quick glass of rim. So yeah, Dave, you should probably tell us what you're wearing on the wrist.
What am I wearing? So I am wearing my Konstantin Chaikin Joker.
That was amazing, Dave. You got close to the mic and we could actually hear you.
No, amazing. So There we go. There is my Konstantin Chaikin. That's not Konstantin. Yes, my Konstantin Chaikin Joker Titanium. Now, this is the second edition of the Wristmond series, which I don't remember them ever being called Wristmonds in the early days. It was literally just a Joker watch. And as I say, this is the titanium version, 88 pieces in this edition, titanium case over the original stainless steel case, which there were 99 issues of that watch. This one has a movement, which is a bit of a hybrid. It's based on an ETA 2824-2, but with Chaikin's in-house manufacture module on top of it. If I remember rightly, about 61 components to the module that's on top of that there as well. And there's a couple of other things that I found out quite recently, because for whatever reason I decided to do a bit of research on this. And the Clou de Paris that is on the bridge piece, so this kind of dark grey piece that forms, I guess, the nose and the kind of eyelashes area over it, has a specific Clou de Paris texture that has been done specifically for this watch and is only featured on the titanium watch. So that's it. And then I can show you the back because there's nothing to hide on there. The little J for Joker, and then you've got the kind of engravings around the side there as well. So that's what I'm wearing today. You'll notice in the mouth there is no moon showing because we are on a new moon. So it's just disappeared and it should just begin to reappear over the next coming days.
I remember we produced a video back before you became a permanent fixture at Scottish Watches. We'll include links in the show notes and in the description as well of this video. So we didn't mention that, but we have got fantastic show notes. If you're listening, if you're at the gym, if you're listening to the audio podcast version of this, there are show notes. You can click the link in your podcast player of choice. It will take you to the website, a particular page where all the pictures, all the links, all the images, all the videos, the technical spec, any Instagram posts that we speak about that were on the Scottish Watches Instagram, follow us there at Scottish Watches. You have got everything at your fingertips, so it means you don't have to constantly check your phone, jump back and forward. You can wait until the end, look at the show notes, see the pictures, and then at your leisure, you can look through stuff instead of as you're driving, trying to click back and forward, because we're all about safety in this show, Dave.
So, should we talk about some new watches?
We shall indeed, and I think the first one we're going to go for is a brand we don't talk about on the show often, if at all, and that's Raymond Weil. It's a brand that I believe is completely independent. They are available on the high street. You can get them pretty much anywhere watches are for sale. And up until this point, I've always kind of looked at them as a Rado, a Certina, or a Hamilton. Kind of entry-level luxury. But this new one that has come across my table, actually not my physical table here, but a table that I was in front of at the weekend, it kind of captured me. Not because of the colour scheme, which we're going to use that turquoise name. It was because it just ticked all the boxes. It's a chronograph. It's not mega expensive. It felt really good in the hand. And it surprised me because, like I say, it's a brand that I never thought would do this kind of thing. So maybe changes are afoot.
No, absolutely. As you say, I think Raymond Weil is one of these brands for me that I bypass them most of the time. And there's no real reason to it. It's probably mainly due to the fact that they've never produced anything that has appealed to me aesthetically. And it is a brand that, if I'm being fair, maybe sits in the doldrums a little bit compared to some of the other brands that have lifted up, or the bigger, more commonly known brands because they advertise more or you see them in sporting events. But, like you, Ricky, this watch for me, when I actually had a look at it, I thought, this is genuinely a great looking watch. So yeah, it does feature a bit of turquoise in there, and they've done it fairly subtly as well. So you've got a bicompact chronograph watch here. This one, they're saying that it's got a bit of a muse and a theme from music. But unlike other watches that we've talked about recently, for example, only maybe a week or so ago, we talked about the Audemars Piguet music watch, which it takes the music theme pretty literally by having a kind of graphic equalizer on the dial. And there's been other ones before. I think Zenith have done stuff before. And generally when music's been the theme, you can't miss the fact that music's the theme. This one, I think if you showed it to most folk and said, what's the theme of this? I don't necessarily think most folk would jump and say music, but they've said that that's the kind of theme from music, with music being lively and upbeat and kind of designed to lift your kind of spirits.
I don't see any music themes at all. I remember Hamilton, like Jazzmasters, there was Sinatra watches, the Elvis watch and the Ventura, and even recently with Zenith and their Carol Cox edition, which I believe keep an eye out and an ear out for future news on something there. And the Swiss Beats edition, the watch I was actually trying to get a hold of a couple of years ago, they were really music-related watches, especially the Carl Cox one with the vinyl records on it. I fail to see how there's a connection here. Not that I'm dissing the watch, because I think it's absolutely incredible looking.
Apparently, the official line on this is that it's inspired by the energy and creativity of live musical performance. So I think they've taken a very abstract kind of view of it, which is maybe the feeling that somebody gets when they're watching a live music performance, and they've tried to recreate it so that when you look at this watch, you get a similar type of feeling. So it's definitely pretty abstract.
That's a reach, isn't it?
Definitely a little bit reachy. But I guess, you know, everyone has to get their muse or their ideas from it somewhere. To actually promote that watch on that basis, I think is slightly different. If the designer had that and tried to create something that gave them that same feeling, fair enough. But I think pitching it or marketing it as a musically inspired watch is maybe a bit of a reach, as you say. But as you mentioned as well, it's a really good looking watch. This, you know, I'm not a big fan of kind of bicompax chronographs as a general rule, but I think this has got a really nice blend between these grey anthracites into almost blacks and this kind of really strong turquoise colour. Yeah, really like it. This is a limited edition model. There's only 400 pieces they're making of this, so I think this one will probably go quite quickly. Big key differences, they do a lot. So the range it comes from is the Freelancer Pop Bicompacts, and the pop being the musical influence, but they do quite a lot of watches in this general feel layout, but nearly all of them, I believe, are stainless steel. This one, though, is titanium. So titanium case and a titanium bracelet with these kind of bright colorways in it. Unlike a few brands, they've really kind of been quite generous. It's only a few $100s more for the titanium over the steel as well. So they're not kind of pushing it too hard to get too much money out of it. You've got a tachymeter bezel with a black ceramic insert. And then I think, if I remember rightly, there's an inner kind of scale as well, which might be a pulsograph or a pulsometer graph in there as well. Check out the show notes for pictures and see the detail on there as well. 43.5mm by 13.7 thick, so pretty much falling in the expected size of a lot of these chronographs that you would expect to see from other brands out there, and coming in at round about $4,000. So pretty solid price point for a titanium case, titanium bracelet, decent Solita kind of movement chronograph watch with a nice bright colorway. So I think this is definitely one that might appeal to a few people that have got the idea of something like this in their mind, but want something a little bit different.
Glowing recommendation from Dave, with a bit of turquoise thrown in for good measure. Well, I got to see this watch in real life, but we'll get to my travels and my kind of watch purchasing of the weekend a little bit later on, and we'll talk about something that I have got zero interest in, and that is the world of soccer, or football as we like to call everywhere apart from America. There's a guy that's quite famous, and there's a second-hand watch platform that's also quite famous that he has somehow got himself involved in, and I can't really connect the dots how this happened or why this happened, but it has definitely given a lot of visibility and exposure to Chrono24. And we've obviously talked about them many times in the past. They are a good place to go to keep an eye on the current prices in the secondary market. They're a good place to find those oddities that you can't find on eBay or the second-hand places on Facebook Marketplace. I recommend this to loads of people, and I'm recommending it right now. If you register an account on Chrono24, you can then have a little virtual watch box. You can put in the details of the watches that you've got, as much as you'd like, down to purchase date, serial numbers, so you've got a digital record of them, and it will keep tags on the pricing, the current pricing, the historic pricing, what the availability is like in the market, and you can get a sort of average running total of how much your watch collection is worth if you've got some heavy hitter pieces that have obviously accrued in value, or you just want to see roughly how much you could get if you decide to cash out, consolidate your collection, and get that killer grail watch that you've always been after. So what's the story here with Ronaldo?
Yeah, it certainly made the rounds in the more business-orientated watch press over the last, I guess, week or so. And that is that apparently Ronaldo has invested in Chrono24. Ronaldo, I'm no big soccer fan either, but every time I see him pop up in, lifestyle press or fashion press or anything else, he does seem to have a fairly substantial premium watch collection, let's put it like that. I think he's a bit of a man that likes a Bobby Dazzler watch. And, that must mean, I'm assuming, that the guy has a bit of a taste and a bit of a like of watches. And maybe as his career's beginning to progress and it's not like he's not earned a fair amount of money, maybe he's thought, I will invest it somewhere that I have a passion for. And he's got himself involved in Chrono24 for some reason. Whether they pitched to him, whether he pitched to them, whether it probably more likely was a whole load of financial advisors that said, here's some money here, these guys might like some money, and put them together.
Was it they say all publicity is good publicity? And that is a face and a name that doesn't seem to have been tarnished. He doesn't get his name dragged through the mud. The tabloids don't seem to do any kiss and tell stories on him. And I'm speaking from no experience with football. I've not been into football since I was a teenager at school, so I pay little attention to it, but I know who he is and it's obviously a good thing. Well, leaving football aside for a moment, we have got some emails from listeners. And we've not done this for a while because we've been busy setting up the studio, doing all the video stuff. That has taken a large amount of time over and above editing the audio podcast, so we've not really hit the stride yet of when the shows are going to come out in video. Obviously, we have our Monday, Thursday schedule for audio. That won't change. People are used to that. But the video stuff, depending how long it takes to edit, put together, include clips, it could drop anywhere. We're going to try and work on that over the next couple of weeks to get things sorted out and get more of your feedback included. But if you'd like to be included in the show, there are many ways you can do so. Do not DM us. That is the first thing. Do not DM us on Instagram because we will not see it. There are too many bots, too many spam messages get sent in, all kinds of weird and wonderful stuff. But drop us an email, info@scottishwatches.co.uk, or in the show notes for this episode and all episodes, there will be a link to a thing called SpeakPipe. And if you click on that, you can actually send us a voice note and we can include that in the show if you prefer. But we have an email here in.
Dear Ricky and Dave, I really enjoyed listening to the latest podcast about new summer watches from Formex. Formex make fantastic watches at such good price points. I've only hesitated to get one as my OCD is troubled by the 4 hex nuts on the front of the case. They don't seem to serve any purpose, and in my humble opinion, spoil the otherwise clean and classy design of the front of the case and their lovely dial designs. The Essence 39 in Malachite is my absolute favourite in their collection. It was interesting to hear about Dave's love for purple and orange dials and the romance of meteorite as a dial material. I recently came across a small Danish mechanical watch brand called Henry Archer. I know the name sounds like a fashion watch brand, who do gorgeous purple meteorite dials, apparently from an actual 4 billion year old meteorite, which may be of interest to Dave, so I thought I'd drop you an email. I've attached a screenshot. Best wishes, Puneet.
Okay, well, I would say the first thing there is the reason for the little hex nuts is the suspension system that are in Formex watches. So as you can see here, this is exactly how the system works. We showed a video in the last episode where the actual strap system and the quick release clasp that you can adjust on the fly while it's on wrist, we included that, which people seem to like. So that explains that. And this purple watch, Dave, what do you think of it?
No, interesting. He is absolutely bang on. The name does have a little bit of a vibe of a certain other fashion brand, shall we say, but there's a lot of watch brands out there that are named after their owner or creator or a name from history. So, we should never dismiss it until you have had a proper look at it. Yeah, looks really a little bit interesting, this one actually. Purple and meteorite, so obviously I'm going to guess there's probably been a little bit of dyes and various other things involved in this as well. But yeah, really like it. I do like a meteorite dial. Quite interesting, and you are not wrong. I like purple and I definitely like orange, as we're beginning to see the fruition of my orange creation come to life, as both myself and Ricky have seen some initial renderings of a project we talked about a couple of weeks ago, but more on that over the coming weeks.
When we're talking about watches that have got meteorites and stuff in them, you're right. I remember there was a watch I get sent across for review from Signum, and what the guys there had done was they'd taken the meteorite, they'd used an acid or a nitrate bath to bring out the colour. So instead of it being standard slate grey, you got these wonderful oil spill colours, the whole rainbow effect on it, and perhaps that's what these guys have done here as well. And I've got one of the Formex watches that's got meteorite in its original state, so it doesn't really matter what way it's been done. Those patterns and those irregular striations, I just love the look of them. Have you got any meteorite watches yourself?
I don't have anything that you could classify as having a full meteorite dial, but I do have some watches that have small pieces of meteorite incorporated into features of the dial, whether it's things like sub-registers on a chronograph, etc. I'm not a big fan of just using it in a dial for the sake of it. if you use it in a creative way, like you just mentioned there, where you maybe kind of acid etch it, or you dye it, or you use the material for the structure of it, or if it's a watch that maybe has a space orientated theme, like, I know Omega have used it in some watches in the sub-dials, etc., etc. I think that's quite a creative way.
Well, Puneet was talking about the Formex releases in all those wonderful colours, but this is the month of wonderful, crazy watches in all kinds of colours. And our friends at Maurice Lacroix, well, they didn't want to sit at the sidelines. They never sit at the sidelines. They're always pushing out things in funky, ridiculous hues. And the releases this time are a little bit more subdued than we're used to. You have a vast experience of ML, probably more so than I do. So do you want to tell us about these new colourways?
This is another suite of colours or suite of releases from Maurice Lacroix and their Aikon automatics. I think it's fair to say that from back in 2018, round about there, when the Aikon was introduced, probably arguably the biggest move that Stefan, as CEO of the brand, introduced into catalogue of watches within Maurice Lacroix. For me, it's the one that changed the narrative of the brand, and it moved it from, again, sitting a little bit under the radar into much more of a brand that sat right in front of a lot of people, and suddenly they started to sit up and take notice, which in some ways was an interesting outcome, because to be fair, the watch does have a few design cues that may or may not look like something a bit more famous from a larger brand in the 5-figure price range.
But having said that, did they not base the look on an old watch that ML had, which I think was called the Calypso?
They definitely looked back to their own catalogue as well, but even I guess in the 90s, it was probably a design that had some degree of influence from something, let's say from the 70s, but we'll not say so much about that.
But Dave, back in the 90s, those things from the 70s were not popular. Even 10 years ago, people really didn't care about those things.
No, that's absolutely true. But, like all, I guess, design, most things take a muse or a hint from something from the past. There's very little that genuinely new when it comes to design. But enough about that.
Have we given them a good alibi? Can we move on now and talk about the new watches?
The Aikon has really kind of, I guess, lifted the notoriety and visibility of Maurice Lacroix into the much wider population, whether it be watch collectors or just people who are looking for a nice looking watch at a great price point. So what have they done for the summer this year? They've introduced 3 new colourways, that being what they call pale pink, which is a kind of nice dusty, subtle kind of keyed pink colour. It's not like the bright punchy pink you would expect from some brands. You've got turquoise, because turquoise has to be done, and you've got definitely orange in the brighter end of the orange scale. Various sizes, 35mm, 39mm and 42mm in there. So you've got all the sizes. The 35mm watch is definitely, I would suggest, probably more aimed at the feminine market, because they tend to have little diamond dots on there. I'm sure there'll be some guys that'll love them, but I think that's probably aimed more at their feminine market. The 39mm, definitely very unisex, and I believe they're available either with or without diamond dials. And they also have the battens if you don't have the diamond dots. Then the 42mm in the largest size, only available with the battens. You've got their classic interchangeable strap and bracelet system, which is arguably one of the best out there. Super easy to use, a little bit funky to use until you get used to it, but it's the minute you get used to how it goes in and out, it's super, super easy to use. And it's really, firm, and it locates properly. There's no wiggle. There's no kind of danger that you think it's going to fall out. Because it's got 2 little, I think, interlocking lugs that go underneath the lug. Once it's on your wrist, there's no chance it's coming off of you either. So really nice system. So they've got the bracelets and they've got the kind of colour-coded FKM straps on there as well.
I love the Aikon. And it's not just because I own one. I liked them beforehand. And right at the beginning you said there about they emulate the look of certain other watches that were 70s based. Very true. We have mentioned that in the show as well. And I think the black ones and the blue ones, they fell into that category quite nicely. But the one that I got a hold of, because it was bronze and it had green and brown hues mixed in, that was complete departure from anything that had come before, and that's what really hooked me. And I spent a good bit of time getting a hold of one of those watches. We reviewed it, and then it was at least 6 months to a year later that I actually got my hands on one, and it's never been out of the first watch box. There's a question for you. Do you have tiers? Do you have like leagues of watch boxes where like the top watch box is the guys you go to first, the second one's like I'm going to the gym, or I'm going to go somewhere that maybe it's a little bit dodgy, and then you've got the kind of also rans?
Yeah, it's fair to say I do. I've got some watches that, you get for whatever reason, you fall foul of the marketing ploys, or you see it and you think, oh, that's quite cool.
Oh, they're disrupting the industry, must get one.
Yeah, that narrative. But I've got some of them that you maybe wear them once or twice and go, that's quite cool, but you've definitely got favourites that it's not one of them. And it ends up in a box, and kind of over time, that box just slowly begins to settle into the sediment, to the point where you occasionally, certainly in my case, have been guilty of forgetting that I even had it.
Have you ever bought the same watch twice? I used to buy the same DVDs twice because I'm an idiot. Have you ever done that with watches?
I have bought the same watch twice deliberately on a couple of occasions for other reasons, but certainly with brands like G-Shock and with brands like Swatch, there has been a few moments where I've thought, oh, great, oh yeah, I need to get that one, and then had that little nagging moment where I've gone, oh, have I not? Is it a similar reference? Is it very similar but not the same? And I've bought, I think, twice I've bought watches and then realised, you idiot, you've already got that one.
Well, I'm going to defend myself because I don't want anyone thinking I'm a complete idiot, only a semi-idiot. And I'm talking about buying Blu-rays and DVDs from the likes of CEX, where I would go in, because who wants to pay full price for things? Did you not hear my Barras episode? I would go in and have a look through the Blu-ray collection and pick up for £1, £1.50. I think I've got 3 copies of Inception or something like that, because I prefer having physical media, because on the streaming services that other people pay for and I have the login for, stuff disappears. And it's never the greatest of quality, and you don't have the behind the scenes, you don't have all the audio commentary, you don't have all that cool stuff. So that was my explanation of why I end up buying things multiple times.
You know what I do it with quite regularly is magazines.
I don't know how we got into that tangent, but anyway, we're going to move from that tangent to another tangent and ask Dave what he's been up to.
What has Dave been up to? So Dave has been on his travels a little bit. Dave was down in London and managed to actually see all, and I mean all, of the 75th anniversary Seamaster collection, which luckily they had just got into store. And most folk, I think, who've been interested in these have seen some of them. Certainly the Seamaster 300, the Seamaster Professional, and a few other models are in quite a lot of stores now. What most folk haven't seen in person, though, is the Ploprof. And it is unbelievably good. I have absolutely confirmed my suspicions that of the suite of releases, this one is by far and away the best. It's so good. The vintage style steel case, the monoblock one, but obviously done in the new Omega steel.
What is Omega steel? What is the differences there?
So actually, we got a little bit of a presentation on it, and Omega steel essentially is a nickel-less steel.
It's going commando.
Going commando. Yeah, see if anyone actually gets that, yeah? Because I think if you get that, fair play to you, because I know exactly what he was saying, but we'll just leave that there and see if you work it out. Nickel free. It's got definitely a different hue when you put it against a 904L steel or something similar to that. You can see the colour differences on it. It looks really good. They've gone back to that original monoblock case, which obviously means there is no case back. The movement, etc., all loads in from the front. That means that the crown assembly is a little bit different. If anyone's been used to seeing the titanium or steel Ploprofs, the more modern ones that have a case back on them, you'll know that when you undo the crown, you've got this kind of split that comes away. You don't have this on this design. You've got, it's not so much unscrew the crown, you unscrew a collar, which allows the crown to come out. So it's a really clever way of doing it. Second best, as you mentioned in our previous show when we were talking about them, was definitely the Ultra Deep with that dial. I made a comment that it looks quite similar to the Grand Seiko Kodo, and it does in pictures, but it looks nothing like it in real life. Very different in real life. It's a kind of laser ablated map or topography of the Marianas Trench, and the little hidden kind of loomed Kilroy was here type thing where it says Omega was here, and the 3 different pools at the bottom of the Marianas Trench is really cool when you see it in real life. Very subtle, but really cool. So yep, lovely to see that entire range when I was down there. And what else have I been up to? And you are going to touch on this, I think, later. I went to see Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and it is amazing. It's exactly what you want from an Indiana Jones film. It's really well put together. Obviously, a lot of that film, you may or may not know, was filmed in and around city centre of Glasgow. And when you watch it, knowing that, you can absolutely spot all the places in Glasgow. They've done some amazing work to show Indiana Jones, or the actor, when he was younger, and he looks like the Indy that you remember from the older films. And then it comes right up to date as he's an older individual now, and he is as he is as an actor. So yeah, really good. If you like Indiana Jones, you'll love this as well. It's a bit of light-hearted humour. Nothing's particularly believable in it, but really well put together. So yeah, that's basically what I've been up to. Other than that, you've got things to tell us, because there was something you meant to tell us about last week, but we ran out of time, and I think you've been up to a couple of other little watch hunting escapades at the same time.
We will talk about something I missed out last week, and that was my trip across to Munich for the Karl F. Bucherer event, and that was to celebrate the refinement of their collections. They've been known in the past for having a massive wide range of different releases, and they wanted to consolidate so that their customers and new customers would be able to understand the different concepts. And I went in with a blank slate almost, because I knew about the brand. It was actually the brand that I first saw when I went to my first ever Basel World in 2017, because the display stand that they had was incredible looking, and this was years and years ago. They had a movement, massive, not life-size, human size or bigger than human size, on the side of their display. And the way it rotated round and the rotor and all the parts moved, that was the thing that caught my eye. But they never really get the headlines. They never have people shouting about them. And I think that's about to change, because some of the releases that I got to see over there with some of the guys that we know, we'll talk about in a second, they were incredible. And I've always kind of turned my nose up at things that were a little bit rainbow coloured, like the Rainbow Daytonas. I thought they were a little bit garish. But they have got a tourbillon with all the rainbow parts on it in gold that was just mesmerising. And I don't usually fawn over watches like that. I got to see their capsule collection, which they've got in carbon, which was really nice to see. Then they had this minute repeater, which we got to listen to as well, which, if you've never heard a minute repeater or a grand sonnerie or things like that, you need to actually experience what these things sound like, because they're tiny, they're wristwatches. But the way that they create melody, the way that they amplify, and the different materials that are used to get the right tonal quality is just incredible. So I managed to record quite a lot of clips. The trip across was easier than I expected. I am absolutely terrible at getting through airports unhindered.
I can confirm.
Dave can confirm. I have had things confiscated that shouldn't have been confiscated. I have been stopped because I've tried to take 15 watches in my carry-on luggage, and people were wondering what the hell was going on. But no, got through, direct flight straight across to Munich, met up with a whole load of people that we know, Rob from Watch Pro, Justin Hast, even Angus from Escapement Magazine, and a whole load of other people. Got met with Lara from Element Communications, who is probably the best, or her organisation is the best in the UK when it comes to interfacing with watch brands. They grease the wheels, allow us to get the information and all the technical details, the hands-on experience of the watches, and bring it to you guys. Because we can all look at press releases and renders, but without getting the watches on wrist, without being able to play with them and have a little bit of time. I mean, anybody could do that. You can just get a catalogue and read the spec of it. It's always better to be hands-on with it, and they facilitate that, which is fantastic. So it was a really good trip. There was a number of speakers, people within the brand, telling us all about the 135-year history, how it's linked with Bucherer, who you've heard of, who have got multiple boutiques and stores across the world. And yeah, even the only watch release, that was something that they spoke about, and we've talked about it on the show a number of times, because I just love the fact that it's black with the tourbillon in the wrong position, even though you do see it from the front, Dave.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I think, my comment on that was, I'm no tourbillon fan, especially ones that are displayed on the case, but that is a good looking watch, and they've done a pretty solid job with that only watch release. Yeah, a brand, again, for me that, I don't think about it too often, but it crops up more, and it crops up in areas that you're least expecting it. I think they were the watch, if I remember rightly, in the John Wick films, or at least certainly one of the episodes of John Wick as well. So, that is hardly one of the smaller Hollywood movies. It's definitely got some kind of coverage in there. And like you, albeit not in Germany, in London, I got a really nice kind of event I was at maybe about 6 months ago. And I got to see the Grand Sonnerie and a few other watches, and was presented to, probably like yourself, by some of their kind of long-term staff members that have history and knowledge of the brand and everything about it. And they do some amazing watchmaking. These guys are not playing at it. And, my understanding as well is over the years, their range has expanded and they have really from relatively entry-level price points right into the kind of stratosphere, but they're kind of compressing their range a little bit as well, bringing it down to lesser families and maybe starting at a slightly more premium price point than they have been at, in the kind of near future.
That's basically the plan. They had too many in their catalogue and they needed to refine it so there wasn't confusion from customers and new customers. And the way you're talking about it there, it reminded me of JLC. You can get a Reverso, you can get a Polaris or whatever, or you can get a Gyro Tourbillon for who knows how much they go for these days. So it's a similar kind of idea. Looking at the quality, everything is unique. I've not seen these types of designs before. Yes, of course, they've got normal divers like the Scuba Tech that just came out recently, but they've got these other wonderful creations, peripheral rotors, as I mentioned, tourbillons. Going to keep an eye on them. Hopefully, we can get some pieces to play with sent across, because that was one of the reasons I went over to Munich, was to introduce Scottish watches to them in person and to ask if they can send across some press pieces we can actually check out and talk about on the show. I really enjoyed the trip. Getting to spend time with Lara, she is incredible. So on the ball with everything. I've obviously worked with a number of members of our team, spent time with Anna at the Zenith event with Cal Cox, but to have the boss there showcasing, introducing, talking to, she knew everybody, she knew all the releases, she knew everybody that was there. It was just a really good event. And then I came back to Earth, back to Scotland with a bang, and at the weekend I went to Silverburn, which is a shopping centre just outside Glasgow, I believe, or just within the limits of Glasgow, and I just went a wander. I wanted to see what was new. So me and Simona went along, we walked into Beaverbrook's and we got to have a look at some of the watches in there. The reason we walked in was Simona liked to look at some of the Gucci's, and I'd always said, little bit of a slightly upmarket fashion brand, but I was pleasantly surprised at their dive watches. They were chunky and half decent. So we went in there, we spoke with a salesperson called Emma, and she was fantastic. If we're ever looking for a spare co-host, she is definitely in the running because she knows what watches. She spotted what I was wearing, knew it was an automatic, and started talking about her fascination and her love of all things. And I believe she's been on a couple of little factory visits as well. From there, we went across to Chisholm Hunter, and they had all kinds of new watches. They had that Tissot that you've got, that yellow and carbon number. And they also had the Indiana Jones watch that features in the movie that you just talked about. So I got to have a look at that. And for a new watch, it recreates the vintage look, that tank style, the miniature, even though it's quartz, for the money, I think it's about 600 odd quid. It was really good, really quite liked it, and that is not a style of watch that I'm into in any way, shape or form. The Raymond Weil we talked about earlier on, got to see that in person. That one totally impressed me, on wrist, in hand. And a watch that I think we spoke about quite a while ago was the G-Shock 40th anniversary. And I've got one of the full metal squares, which was a 5000 series GMB, I think it is 5000. And I got that many, many years ago. Probably the first Red Bar I went to, down at James Porter & Son, where I met up with you again. Ta-da! That was like many years ago and led to where we are today. This one has got recrystallized metal. And we talked about it in the show and I thought, yeah, whatever. Seeing it in real life, it's a material that defies logic. Couldn't get my head around it. And rotating it on wrist with the fairly crap lights that you get in high street shops, I was really impressed with it. I almost bought it, but I didn't. And there was one last watch. There was a Longines Spirit that we spoke about in the show a couple of weeks ago there. Once those watches were put to the side, George, who was dealing with us, said, well, you like watches, so I've got something you might really like. And he disappeared. And he came back and he put down on the table the new Seiko 5 Snoopy Surfboard Edition.
It's such a cool watch. You know, Seiko 5s, what can you say? They've got some of the best collaborations, designs, and, you know, inexpensive price points for pretty much any watch on the market. You know, Seiko 5 have carved themselves a niche out that competes with, you know, as you say, G-Shock, competes with Swatch Watch for accessible watches with cool designs, and this little Snoopy surfboard one is super cool. So anyone who can't get a Snoopy orientated watch from another brand, or maybe can't afford one, this is an extremely good alternative. And if you've got one, I'm rather jealous because it's a cool piece.
Well, you're not going to be jealous of me, but I had to do a little switcheroo. we're sitting there, I'm looking at it and thinking, that's actually really nice. And Simona is going crazy, sitting next to me going, oh my God, I didn't realise that this was so small, because she's used to Seikos and Grand Seikos being big, beefy numbers. And this was a 38mm on an 8.0. So she's going absolutely crazy about it. And I'm thinking, right, if I do something here and I buy it for her, she's going to say no, and we're going to have a bit of a tantrum in the watch shop. So let's not do that. So I pretended I was going to buy it. And we went through the motions, and me and Simona were talking about this, that, and the other. And the guy goes away and he gets the box and he brings it back and he gets it all sorted out. And I'm keeping my mouth shut, Then we get home, and then I present it to her, and she's got no option but to take it. She can't run away. She can't take it back to the shop. So yeah, she ended up with a Snoopy, and that's the reason the Daytona's going back to the lockbox at the safety deposit place, because I'm taking my Snoopy out so we can have his and her Snoopies.
That's both cute and somewhat sickening simultaneously, so excellent work.
Yeah, they'll become rare, but not as rare as the watches that we've got in our charity watch auction. We have got a number of heavy-hitting, one-off, unique pieces, prototypes, and we've been teasing it for nearly 2 years. It's taken a long, long time to get all the watches together, including one super late entrant, which got just in at the very last second possible. And it is tremendous as well. It is outstanding. The amount of watches, the collection, the hard work that so many people, so many brands have put in for what we've been putting together. And I think it's time to release to the world all the information, Dave. So do you want to run us through the releases?
I will. So we'll have a quick run through of the models that are there, but check out the show notes, check out the video for links to the whole catalogue. And if you want to look more in depth, get more details about them, etc., etc. So we'll start with the Christopher Ward Sealander, which is a special edition of a watch that we released with Christopher Ward. There were only 69 of those watches released, but the magical 70th was a special piece unique variant, which has a bespoke dial and has special engraving on the back.
So that is our Highlander watch. It came out just around a year ago. As Dave's mentioned, 69 pieces. Me and Dave got number 1, number 69, and the rest of you guys were the meat and the sandwich. But we have got that one special edition left. And the differences versus the normal Sealander and the Highlander edition is the way that the dial has been created, the patterning on it, the saltire on the see-through case back, and a couple of little bits that have been fettled and changed here, there and everywhere. So that's the first watch. What else have we got, Dave?
Then we've got the Fears Brunswick Ice Edition. Again, a piece unique. This was one of the first watches that was agreed to be made for us. I remember having the conversation with Nick a long time ago at the kind of very start of this. Really more as much getting his feel for it. Do you think this is something that's viable? Do you think brands would like to get on board? He didn't even pause or hesitate and said, I'll absolutely do something. And, there's a story behind this watch. This is based on, probably his best-selling model in his reign, the Brunswick, with a unique dial, which is done in this beautiful ice blue colourway as well. Engraved case back with the logo and the one-of-one edition on there as well. And it has a bracelet fitted to it. So this watch is very special. I think even Nick himself is rather taken by the dial in this one. So, yeah.
This one is special because I believe it was the first or one of the first watches that Nick had put a metal bracelet on. And that's something with Fears that you don't usually get. And the amount of attention to detail and work that's gone into creating the dial in this watch is incredible, because we saw the process over many months and iterations and prototypes. This wasn't a case of send a design to the dial maker and it comes back and it gets fitted and that's the job done. This was a long and complex process. So big shout out to Nicholas at Fears for this one. Next up, what we got?
Next up is the William Wood Every Watch Limited Edition. Again, a piece unique on this one as well. Everything you would expect from William Wood, obviously that kind of fireman inspired watch with the fire hose strap on there, some beautiful engraving on the case back, and the kind of logo embossed into the sapphire glass on the case back here as well. So again, a piece unique, one of one on this one. So anyone that's a William Wood fan, if you want something super rare, super exclusive from them, this is maybe one to keep your eye on.
Differences with this one is the orange colour scheme. I believe this is the first time that William would have created a watch with this coloured dial, with this style of bezel, with this colouring of the case back, the colour of the movement linked to that, and the strap And with William Wood, the presentation box, everything you get with a watch, it just adds to the experience. The unboxing experience is pretty much unparalleled, like most of the watches that we've actually got within our auction. So looking forward to potentially a big William Wood fan ending up with that in the wrist.
Now we move on to Anordane, the Glasgow-based brand, very famous for their enamel dials. And in this one, not so much a piece unique, albeit it is unique, but a prototype. So this is a prototype of their Model 1 in a smaller size with a very special linen dial. This dial is part of a project of another watch they were creating as a piece unique for a famous individual in the linen and tailoring trade. And this is something that they were working on various things, and this became one of their prototype watches for that. It ended up being different from the actual watch that was delivered to the client in the end, but they decided that they would donate this prototype, which is something very different because most brands do not let prototypes out of their clutches because it's part of their backstory and their heritage. But they have very kindly, Lewis and Anordane, very, very kindly allowed us access to this, which will also lead on shortly to the second thing that they, as a brand, have donated. But Ricky, a bit of background on this one first.
This one's special because you can't get hold of Anordane watches. The waiting list is long. People have to pay a deposit. They have to wait 3+ years to get one of the watches. And if you want to jump the queue, we've said before, then this is something you should look at. And the fact that it is a genuine one of one, because the arrangement, the dial, the patterning is unlike anything else they've released before, they're likely to release again. You're going to get something that is sought after, but especially so because nothing else is going to look like it.
Which leads us on to the little brother of Anordane, that is Pollen, which also falls under the same stable. And again, they have issued us with a prototype watch, this being the 1-1000, which is a prototype of a watch that is for a product that's yet to make it to market from Pollen. Moving up market with Pollen, where they've previously had a couple of watches at the more affordable end. This is incorporating a manual wound ETA movement in here as well, and that it can only be described as a deep kind of olive green dial with a very bright blue pop hand on it as well. No markings, no indices, no printing on the dial otherwise. This one is one that certainly I personally am extremely taken by.
We've spoken about Pollen before. I own one of their watches, the Commuter, and they are related to Anordane through family connections. I believe it's Lewis's wife and her sister that run Pollen and have done for many years. They have always had slightly less expensive models, but equally as impressive. We did a review of their Neo a couple of years ago, and I remember you actually telling me a story about, I think it was your niece that was really into that watch. So another great Scottish brand. What else have we got?
So the final prototype watch that we have on offer is from Bamford. And when we spoke to George about potentially looking at doing something with us for the auction, he had a bit of an idea, which he had been working on a watch with one of his children. And he said, I really need to ask them if it would be okay that we donate this. And this is a prototype B80. This is a very typically Bamford styled watch, but in an interesting, predominantly black colourway, black case, black dial, but with very bright blue and yellow pops on there as well. So this is the prototype B80, a Sellita SW200 movement on board in this, and a titanium case in 39mm. This is a really special little watch, and as anyone who follows Bamford watches knows, he's a man that enjoys his packaging and such like, so he's gone to town with the packaging in this. So yeah, this is a pretty special little watch, and again, thanks to George for donating this.
Yeah, this is kind of the colours that I like, so I might have to get one of my friends or family to start bidding on my behalf, because I don't think it's good that we would be involved in the bidding processes ourselves. So yeah, the Bamford is really cool, and big thank you to George and everybody else for sending these amazing watches in for such a worthy cause. What have we got next?
So again, another one that we have worked with before, that be Isotope, and as you say, was very keen again to do something similar. So as many listeners are aware, we had the Hydrium Alba version, which was one of the limited releases that we did with the guys at Isotope. Again, we retained one of the models, which has a specially engraved case back on there and has had a few other little embellishments done to make this a piece unique from within that range of limited edition watches as well. And I'm a big fan of the Hydrium family, and it's great to see this watch making it into the fold as part of the auction as well.
It's been a while since we've had Juicy on the show, so I think we might have to remedy that because he's always got some amazing tales to tell, and the Alba has probably got one of the best stories of any watch release in recent times I can remember, not just because of the fact we got involved in the process, but the fact it links to Scotland and Glasgow. So that is one to watch, and the dial on that and the handset, they just work fantastically well. Now, what have we got next, Dave?
Next up is another friend of the show, another British watchmaker, that being Studio Underdog, and Rich has come through in spades with this one. Basically, P, as is well known, has done a couple of very limited edition watches. He's also not shy about seeing people who've sent in pictures of watches and doing something with that as well. So to have a piece unique from him is pretty special. This is the Blueberry chronograph, based on the infamous chronograph series of watches that he's done, whether it's the Strawberries and Cream, whether it's the Mint Choc Chip, whether it's the Pandas, or any of the other watches he's done. This is a one-of-one piece unique in a light blue into darker blue palette of colours in there as well. I love this watch. I think it's so cool. And I believe Sarah, the mistress of the auction, I believe she has rather taken with this as well.
Yeah, she loves it. And I can see why. He's obviously taken the colour hues from Scotland and decided to blast it onto the dial. And we mentioned in the show, I think last week, it doesn't matter what he does with watches, they always seem to be home runs. And it's not a case of just changing a colour for the sake of it. He puts thought, detail, care and attention into everything he does. And like all the other watches in the auction, we're hoping for some big things.
We have one final late entry who managed to get their submission in just under the wire, just in time for all the pictures and the website to go live. This is from Satori Billard, a very special watch. This being the SB04. He was asked late on, or actually volunteered, I think is fair to say, late on in the game. He said, I'll happily put something in as well. And the dial on this one has to be seen to be believed. It is super special. Very much a blue palette, in keeping with Scottish watches in Scotland. But anyone who is aware of the recipient of the funds from this charity auction will know as soon as they look at this watch that that's what it's all about. Beautiful design in there as well, with the La Joux-Perret movement in there and decoration on the case back. Again, a piece unique. This one, I think, is going to catch a few people unawares when they see it. A brand that you don't see that often day to day, has to be said. People that know. You know, occasional host of the show, Barbara, is a person who has a bit of a deep love, it has to be said, for this brand in particular. And she helped us to line up this submission. So thank you to her as well for all of that. Yeah, very, very special watch, this one.
So this is based on, well, it isn't based on, this is an SB04 iteration, and every watch that Armand puts together is a piece unique because he bases it on the design of the person that's buying it. But this time, when he spoke to us, we actually just said, you know what, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, this is a charity, this is what they do. You know, take the floor, come up with something yourself. And he did. And there was only a couple of times he gave us hints of what he was up to and said, am I on the right track? And we just looked at it and says, of course, it's whatever you want. And the result is just incredible. The detailing on it, the logo for the charity that is subtly placed on the dial, the inscription in the back, the decorated movement, the anodizing, everything about it, even down to the buckle on the strap itself, and the fact that you get all this cool stuff in the box. There's a pocket square in silk that's custom, and there's a letter from Armand explaining about the process of building the watch and the names of everybody involved in it, from the person that put it together to the person that polished the case. So another fantastic piece that I'm looking forward to seeing what bids we get on.
You know, our heartfelt thanks go out to every individual, every person that's helped, every brand owner, every watchmaker who's had to put their time, their effort and everything else into something that they saw absolutely zero reward for in terms of financial. The only reward they'll have is that this goes to charity, it goes to an auction, and it goes to a very good charity that really does a lot of great work to look after not just people who unfortunately are suffering from cancer, but their families, their greater extended families. Whether it's a good outcome, a bad outcome, they're a great charity that really deserve as much support as is possible. So even if you are bidding on a watch and you don't ultimately win, even if you decide to consider maybe making a small donation to them alongside it for the charity, that would be greatly appreciated. But the auction, we should say, goes live on the 16th of August and runs through to the 23rd of August. It's a timed online auction, but there will also be a couple of opportunities for you to see the watches in person before you commit to making a bid on something or decide which one you should be bidding on. We will be doing it in two places. We will have them in Bristol, where Nick at Fears has very kindly agreed to host a range of watches at his headquarters in Bristol. The dates for that will be coming out shortly, and we will be putting invites out to people to come along and see. And also in Glasgow, where you can come and look at the full range of watches again before the auction goes live. Now, if any of you are interested, if you're listening and you think, I want to have a look at some of these because I might be interested in taking part, and you can get to Bristol or to Glasgow, please do drop us an email. No DMs, drop us an email or contact Ricky or myself, or if you know Sarah, drop Sarah a message and say, I'd like to come and see these. Tell us if you want to come and see, because there's so many people that we could invite. We will no doubt miss people, but if you want to see them, please do let us know and we'll make sure that you can see them. If you can't get to Bristol, if you can't get to Glasgow, if you're in the US, if you're in Asia, and you want some more pictures, we've got suites of photographs. They will mostly be online.
Super high res.
Super detailed. But if any of you want a bit more or say kind of a little bit of information about this, please do reach out and we will try and get you as much information as we can to be as helpful as we can, because we want these watches to go for as much money as people can possibly afford to pay. So thank you again to everybody involved in this.
It's been a 24-month process, and I'm just super happy at what has been accomplished so far before the bids even come in, and everybody has gone beyond what we asked them to do. There has been nobody that has under-delivered. Everyone has under-promised and over-delivered, so a massive thank you to everybody. And here's an idea, Dave. Why don't we dedicate a future show before the auction starts, or maybe just as it starts, and we can bring each of the brands on for maybe 5-10 minutes just to talk about the watch, the process, what's been involved in it, and give their side of the story, because it's all very well and good us talking about what we've got sitting, but it's always better to get the creators and the folks that actually masterminded the pieces together.
Absolutely. So that will be an absolute nightmare when it comes to the video edit, but we have a wide range of individuals that will be great to get on to get their opinion on it. Some are great in video, some probably are not wanting to be in video. Tough. They submitted their watch, they now have to come on camera and talk about the watch. But yeah, absolutely. Let's get the people on who understand the watch, know why they did what they did, and can give a bit of a background as to why they've done it and why they've done what they've done to the watches. So look forward to that in the next few weeks as the auction comes up.
And to reiterate what Dave said, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. Just because we have got these in the UK, if you're in America, Australia, Germany, Switzerland, it doesn't matter. You can register. Details will be in the show notes and in the description in our YouTube video. You can go there, set things up ahead of time and get involved. It is pretty much just like buying from eBay, just slightly different. So yes, anybody that's got an interest in any of these watches at all, get involved in this because it's going to be fantastic. So thanks for joining us on our horological journey, and yeah, just check out the show notes, follow us on Instagram at Scottish Watches. If you want to get in touch with us, email us, don't DM us, info@scottishwatches.co.uk, and that is a wrap. So thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys again soon.